Today we're going to be discussing the fatwa on home finance, inshallah. I'll be bringing on Mufti Abdullah Nana, and we'll start with getting to know about him and his background and go from there. Again, thank you all for joining, and we're going to get started, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti Sahab. How are you doing?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, doing well. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, doing well, doing well. Let's get right into it, Mufti Saab. I mean, people are interested to understand about Islamic home financing and they want to understand the nature of how it works. But before we dive into that, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background dealing with financing and Islamic financing in general, just so the audience can get a little bit of familiarity of where you're coming from as a scholar in the field.
Sure. So my university degree was from the University of California, Berkeley, one of the top public universities in India. I My major was business administration, so I studied at the Haas Business School, and I graduated with the honors the year 1998, if I remember correctly. And then I went to overseas to study, and I studied for 6 years. I finished the entire Alim course, and then I spent 1 year studying IFTA, emphasis with a specialization in fiqh and with a specialization in Islamic finance as well.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. And then after your studies, did you do any specific work that was on the ground? Anything that you want to share with us from your experience?
Yes, I presented at the Harvard Islamic Finance Seminar at Harvard University, roughly 2014. I wrote a research paper on takaful, and I presented that, and it was also accepted for publication as well. So, and I've attended a number of Islamic finance seminars. I've also served on the board a number of Islamic finance companies as well. So, alhamdulillah, I'm able to get some experience, although the experience in America is limited because finance is also very limited in America.
Jazakallah khair, Muhtasab. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you sharing that background. Now let's get started.
sure.
Let's start with the first introductory question to kind of ease into the discussion, right? When we're hearing about Islamic finance, the question is, what are the different ways Islamic financing works, particularly for buying real estate? Like, if you can explain the different types that exist and how they work in simple terms for the audience.
Sure. So, number is the model known as uh, a installment sale, murabaha, installment sale. We use installment sales on a regular basis. Most of our cell phones, in fact, are purchased on 36 months or spread out over a period of time. So it's the total amount you're going to be paying back is probably more than the actual value of the house or the value of the phone, but you're paying is spread out over time, right? So it's known as Rabha, Best Buy, and many appliances. Most appliances are also sold on this basis as well. So that's option number one. I will say that it's not as common in America, but there's a slow revival of it. Right? There's a new company out there that's actually offering this. Uh, the second model is lease to own. This also exists to some extent as well. Although most people, what we're used to is short-term lease. We're used to getting a new car and keeping it for 2 3 years and then giving it back. But lease to own, right? Also this as well. So you're going to be making your uh, rent payments for 5 to 10 years, and then when the last payment is made, then uh, the company will generally offer you buy the house for whatever dollars, right? It just meant to be more uh, symbolic aspect, but if you made all the rent payments for a long term period of time, the option of buying the home for a minimal cost, right? So that's also option number two. It is not common, I would say, the installment sale, and at this point in time, looking at the state of America, the installments, both in sale and the lease to own, are probably less than 3 or 4% of the Islamic Christians in America. Right, the predominant model is known as a diminishing partnership, right? A shirkat al-mutanaqisa. This is the most common model, and I would say close to 80 to 90% of all Islamic finance transactions In America, based on diminishing partnership.
Okay.
And it's yeah, and the diminishing partnership, uh, the customer and the Islamic finance company jointly purchase right. So let's say looking at a uh, down payment of 15%, right? So the customer puts in 15%, the Islamic finance company puts in 85%. Both of them jointly purchase the home. Over time, every month, the customer is going to be buying back uh, of the house. So let's say each month the customer 1% and buys 1% share of the home, right? And now over a long-term period of time, uh, the customer is going to increase their share of the home. At the same time, because the customer is living in the home, the customer will also be paying rent home as well. So looking at the percentage of the ownership, I give the example that the customer owns 50% of the home, the company owns 85% of the home. So now the customer will pay rent for using 85% of the home, looking at the market rent in that area, uh, right? And whatever the rent is of the home, 5% of that the customer will pay. So there's multiple transactions going on a monthly basis, right? Buying back shares of the home, paying for rent, and so on. So time, the customer's share of the home will increase, the company's share will decrease, and when the final paid, the customer will be 100% owner of the house, and the customer will not have to pay any rent at that point.
Got it. Jazakallah khair. Now, are you just to summarize, you gave three types of models that currently exist in the West, and the model that is the most used, I guess, or exercised is the third one that you mentioned, which is
Yes.
called a diminishing partnership, where a person partners up with the financing institute, and essentially they buy out the partnership as a part of their payment, and as a second part of their payment they pay for the usage as a rent, and
Yep.
that is combined as a sum, and that's how much they end up paying monthly over a long period of time, be it 15 or 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, now, I mean, this kind of segues right into the next question, since we're talking about two factors which dictate the monthly amount that's due to the partner to buy out the partnership as well as to pay for
Yep.
the rental space. In many cases, you'll see that Islamic financing rates and the regular bank interest rates are often very similar. Like 6.2 is, let's say, Islamic, and 6.1 or 6.2 might be the conventional with Rocket Mortgage. So people
Yep.
have a concern, and they're wondering, since they have the same rates, they have the same financing rate as the interest rate that exists on Rocket Mortgage, for example, how can they be different Islamically, or is this even a relevant point to discuss?
Yeah. So the point we look at is how Sharia compliant is the model behind the process, right? So I mean, if we look at it, right, there's Meyer supermarkets, right? We don't have Myers here in California, but yes, if you go to a halal meat store and you'll the halal meat being sold there, let's say it's for $2.50 a pound. If you walk into Meyer, it might be $1 a pound, but there's a world to just because the price might be similar, or let's say just because you might use the interest rate as a benchmark, that does not make the model halal or not halal. We have to look at the structure of the model and to see if there's a loan involved, riba is involved, or if it's another form of a legitimate transaction. So because right, we all that there's extra work involved. The halal chicken that's slaughtered by hand, slaughtered by Muslim, requires extra work. And the product sold at Meyer, right? It might be similar at the supermarket. The product might be similar, but there is one is halal, one is Sharia compliant, and even if the price, right? Generally, Sharia compliant models might cost a little bit more, right? If there might be a nominal additional cost, but we're paying, right? As Muslims, we understand we have to pay a little bit extra for halal meat You have to pay a little bit extra for the compliant products.
In this
So,
case,
so
go
I
ahead.
would say, as a summary, don't be fooled by the similar cost uh, or the similarities between the Islamic model and the current interest rates. The similarity, right, doesn't mean that one is just because you're using one or an interest rate as a benchmark doesn't mean that you're actually using interest, and doesn't mean that the model involves interest.
So could I reframe that in a different way? You could tell me if I got it correctly or not. So
Sure.
essentially, if someone sees Rocket Mortgage at 6.2% and they see an Islamic financing institute at 6.2%, their first question is, well, if it's the same rate, it must be haram. And what you're saying is them being the same rate, meaning, and you're using the word benchmark, it's the Islamic Financing Institute using a reference to determine their financing rate happens to be the same as the reference for Rocket Mortgage. Them referring to something to set their profit or diminishing partnership, whatever it is, doesn't make it haram in and of itself. What makes it
No.
haram is if there's actually riba involved. Did I understand that
Yes,
correctly?
that's correct.
Okay,
Right. And
this is
and the parallel I give, right? If just because a halal meat store is using Myers or the supermarket to set the prices, that doesn't make it halal or haram. Right? We have to look at the slaughter process. We have to look beyond the numbers.
in reality that percentage has nothing to do with interest.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing I
Yes.
think a lot of people miss. Like a lot of us, when we're seeing this, we're thinking, well, this equals interest, and that's actually not what makes it interest. And I wanted your help clarifying that. So, jazakallah khair.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess the other way of looking at it, interest, Islamic law, interest involves a loan,
G,
and the models that we discussed,
G,
right? A installment, there's no loan involved, right?
G,
There's an item involved.
G,
You're actually buying or selling the
G,
item, and now you have a credit price, installment price for the item that's being sold. There's no loan. Likewise, in the uh, lease to own, you're leasing the item, right? But you're not. There's no loan involved again.
G.
Yeah, you're paying to use the item, and diminishing partnership. Likewise, there's no loan, right? You're buying back shares of the home, but technically there's no loan.
So what you're saying is that there's two types of transactions that take place. One that deals money for money, which is a loan, and one that
Yeah,
deals with the exchange of money for an item. In this case, the
yeah,
item is the house, which is being exchanged, which is why it's
yeah.
a partnership. And that's the difference maker. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, yes,
Okay. And
yeah. So
again,
in simple terms, we can also call it this way: one is asset-backed financing, one is money-backed financing,
could
right?
you
So
just break
if
that down? That sounds perfect. That sounds like,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So if I lend you $100,000 on 6% APR, right? Then this is a money-based transaction. I'm making
G,
asset-backed transaction. I'm selling a house at XY, say 5% profit rate, so that house, right? It's an item that I'm selling, so it's asset-backed. It's different from making. It's not making money from money. It's making money from a physical item
G.
or asset.
So the asset-backed financing is permissible because there is an item involved, and the
Yes,
money backed financing is impermissible because it's purely money for money. Is that correct?
yes, yes.
Some people have a question and a confusion when they hear this, and they say, "Well, isn't Rocket Mortgage also asset-based because they're giving you the loan based on the valuation of the house when they do an appraisal?"
The challenge there is we have to examine the closely, and the financing you're getting for Rocket, it's a pure loan.
G,
Right? If you look at the term, right?
G,
Yes, the house might be collateral, but the financing is based. You're receiving a certain amount of money, and you're going to be paying back then the amount that you receive.
G, which is riba.
Yeah. So looking at the pair, it is a loan. It is financing. Yes, making the house collateral does not make it back financing.
G,
So asset-backed financing requires the item to be sold and the item to be sold at a cash price or a credit
got it.
price.
Now, Mutasab, I have a question that as a follow-up, it just came to my head.
Sure.
Some people say, well, look, you're saying that the terms of the contracts is really what dictates permissibility. And
Yes.
if isn't that just a workaround to do the same thing that you want to do at the end of the day to say it's halal but it's not? How do we address that?
So number one, the not everyone specializes in Islamic finance. Not everyone can read these contracts and understand them. That's why this concept is there of Sharia advisory boards and Islamic finance scholars who audit the company, who review the paperwork, and ensure that on a regular basis, on a yearly basis, the the documents and the is checked and everything is in compliance. Right. So the average person doesn't have the time or the leisure to go through these contracts and to review them. So for the public, this is the simple formula, right? Look for the scholars who are on the advisory board, right? Review them, review the paperwork, and take their word for it. We do this for other fatwas, for other questions as well.
Gee,
Right? So it's a similar process.
gee. Jazakallah khair. And if it's okay with you, I just wanted to just share from what I've learned is just the fact that if something happens to look like a workaround, it is going to be actually different because of that workaround, and that workaround is actually what makes something different from being halal versus haram. And
Yes.
I think that's kind of important for the audience to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So we can go on to the.
So, and to
Go ahead.
add to that, there is the famous hadith of Bilal anhu in Sahih Muslim, in which he wanted to trade pounds of cheap quality dates for 1 pound of quality
Gee,
dates, right? And it's a specific transaction, bartering. It's not very common anymore. Trading dates for dates, it's not very common at all. I live in California. Most of America's dates come from Coachella and Indio. Uh,
gee.
but for dates, the rule is the amount has to be same on both sides. So the Prophet saw Bilal Radanhu, and he said, I traded 2 pounds of cheap dates for 1 pound of quality dates. The Prophet Muhammad said, that is riba. That is the very essence of riba. Him, oh Bilal, why didn't you take that the 2 pound dates, trade them for 1 dirham or $1, and then take that dirham and use it to buy the 1 pound of quality dates? Right. So one is riba, right? The end result seems to be exactly the same, and
Gee,
one seems to be just a one, but there's a big difference in Islamic law. One is halal, one is a completely halal transaction, and the other is a haram interest based.
Jazakallah khair. That was like the perfect example to address that concern. And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, it doesn't get clearer than the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yes.
We can go to the next question, Mufti Sahib. That was great. Thank you so much. A few of the people who do subscribe to Islamic financing, they have this question where they say, "Look, can you use Islamic financing to buy more than one property, or is it only allowed for your primary home?" Because they're understanding that this fatwa is given out of durura, out of necessity. So if their necessity is fulfilled by the house they live, could they consider using Islamic financing institutes for investment properties or a second home?
So just to make it very clear, I respect there's other scholarly boards out there, and some of them have given this fatwa that certain companies are allowed based on necessity. Right? I don't agree to that. Right? That's their opinion. Keep in mind, my job is to ensure that the paperwork is Sharia compliant and the model is halal for Muslims. Right? So if I believe the model to be halal, you can buy property, you can buy your primary residence through it, or you can buy another 5 properties. The model's halal. Right? So I don't agree with the this custody, right? That's and at the same time, just to make this very clear, I have access to paperwork that some of these other scholarly bodies do not have. This is important as well, right? I was there for for some of the conferences, and the rulings that they gave, we didn't have access to certain paperwork, so the model's not halal. How
So
can you give if you don't have access to the right paperwork? Say we don't have access to the paperwork. Don't give a final verdict if you don't have access to the paperwork. I do, right? I've signed it. I have access to certain paperwork. So I feel some of those fatwas were unfair, and I feel that they were a little bit biased as well. But that's my personal stance, right? But if my job, right, I look at the paperwork. If I say model's halal, you can use it to buy multiple properties. You can use it to buy investment properties. You could use it to buy commercial properties. In fact, many people use them. Many communities are using them to buy masjids. Right. So my job is to make sure the model is halal.
Gee, so just to summarize from my side, there are, from what you're saying, there are scholars that look at using Islamic institutes out of darura, out of necessity. Whereas you're saying this doesn't even have to be considered, given the model itself inherently is permissible.
Yes.
Therefore, we can apply this model, be it for one home or five homes. Is that correct? Did I understand correctly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And that's basically the answer. I mean, and but Mufti, as you all saw, Mufti Saab started off by showing respect to the other scholars who may have that, but then he also concluded by mentioning that there may be a shortcoming on the available of what they have available or
Yeah.
accessible in terms of paperwork. Is that correct, Mufti
Yes.
Saab?
Yes, that's correct.
Jazakallah khair.
For the record, I was there at that conference,
Ji,
right? That famous Islamic finance conference held in Dallas, where a lot of these models were just. I was there, but the final decision was not made there. The final decision was made privately by those
I
individuals,
see.
but by the individuals in charge and by the board members. So the
Okay.
average attendee was not able to final decision.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Jazakallah khair, Mufti Saab.
Yeah.
Here's another question that comes up, and for those who are watching, we have about like three more questions left, so we're halfway there. Some people bring up this concern. They say, look, Islamic financing companies, they end up selling their contracts to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae after the deal is done. And the concern is, have scholars considered this aspect of the transaction, and does this affect the permissibility of the transaction itself?
So just as a disclaimer, right, I'll be the first person to admit Islamic finance in America is not perfect. There are shortcomings, and there are major shortcomings as well. Challenge almost every single Islamic finance company in America has some source of haram funds coming in. Right? I don't agree with that. Right? I'm the first one to object to that. Right? It's not I, but it's until we as Muslims involved and we are vocal about our views, it's going to take a long time to change. So that is reality. Also in the back, right? Most of these Islamic finance companies are selling off our transaction to other companies, right? To be fair, at least in the diminishing partnership model, there seems to be some scope of it because the customer and the company are partners. And partners in Islamic law, partners are allowed to sell their share. Yeah, they are allowed to sell their share. So these from the diminishing partnership models, right? I've talked to the main scholars who developed the model and who are in the boards, and this is one possible explanation that can be given. But the 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 underlying answer is the Islamic finance scholars will look at the track between the customer and the company. Right? That's what we can control as customers. We and ensure that our transaction between us and the company is lawful. What do they do afterwards? Right, that's not in our control. I do not recommend selling the transaction to Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. I'm not behind it. Will not affect the transaction between the customer and the company.
So again, to summarize, I think about 3 points were made. The first point is that um, Islamic Institute selling off the loan is something out of the control of the client. And
Yes.
from what I understand, Mufti Saab, that it's pretty much a requirement in like an indirect requirement per se for them to even exist to be able to fund anything. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, it's a it's a financial necessity,
GG,
right?
for them to
Because
even fund.
companies
Yeah,
do not have most companies do not have $5 trillion
correct,
lying around that they can
correct,
loan
correct.
that they homes, right? So it's a practical necessity, not an Islamic
G,
necessity,
G,
but a
G.
practical
So
necessity.
one, they're kind of stuck, let's say, with this, and you compliment you supplemented it by saying that this is not perfect to begin with, but this is essentially the fatwa that's given to accommodate what we have in our current situation. And then you,
Yes, and just to add as well, among the companies, uh, One in particular is trying to move away from all sort of outside finance and to use it within the Muslim community,
Okay.
right? So saving deposit boxes, saving accounts, and allow Muslims to invest into these models to make halal money from these models. And the goal is eventually to move towards 100% financing. We're not at that level yet, but slowly it is growing, right?
And I really appreciate this response from you, Mufti Saab, because I feel like a lot of people who are pro Islamic financing, they shy away from just saying this, and there's nothing to shy
Yeah.
away from because it's the reality, and the fatwa is given
Yeah.
considering this. If you shy
Yes.
away, it makes it look like we're actually ignorant of the fact,
Or we're trying to hide something.
Yeah.
We're not trying to hide it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan, Mufti Saab. That definitely
Okay.
helps. But he did make a second point for the audience, which is that the scope of what can be controlled, which is the contract between the customer himself and the institute, that has a legitimate contract and a partnership, which is permissible.
Yes.
Now, here's we're pretty much coming toward the end of these questions, but I was going to ask this one. Are there any must-have conditions other than a partnership for an Islamic financing institute to be established to be permissible? Any specific conditions that you can mention, perhaps? I've heard of things about, differences when a person defaults, but I wanted to just leave it open in case you want to add something to the uniqueness of Islamic financing.
Well, one of the main requirements is that the Islamic finance company should purchase the home, right? It shouldn't be just a idea pie in the sky. Islamic finance company should purchase the home, and right, depending on the model, if it's a murabaha model, installment sales, Islamic finance company must purchase the home first, then sell it to us on a second basis. If it's a diminishing partnership, again, there should be a paper trail, right, where company and customer jointly purchase the home, right? They're listed as the joint owners, and they assume some of the responsibilities and rights of owners as well. There is a discussion about taxes and paying taxes. uh,
And
if you're
insurance and property insurance, G.
yes, yes, yes. So there is some move to address this, and more Muslims are being aware of these issues. So there is some movement within the companies to address this. These are some of the issues to pay attention to.
So it seems, if I understood, this is how I understood it. I would love your correction on this. Is that
Yeah.
in an ideal manner, the institute and the client would share the cost on insurance and taxes. However, it seems as if the client is choosing to forego his right entering the contract. Is that what's happening essentially?
Uh, what's actually happening is the company is using the payments, and they're calculating the monthly cost of the of property tax. They're calculating that and putting it into the customer's payments. So the customer is making the payments, but yes, in a way, they're jointly being made because the collecting those payments, and then the company is using that to make the
Oh.
pay the property tax.
I see. So the percentage, that's the financing rate, it's considering a few things. One, it's considering the partnership, buying out the partnership. Two, it's considering the rent. And three, it's considering any additional cost that could be coming due upon the
Yes,
financing institute. And based upon that, they're setting the rate as, let's say, 6.2. Did I understand that
yes,
correctly?
yes, yes.
Okay.
And I'll just add this on as a
Please, please.
this point. I'm just adding this on. Uh, America's a strange country. For the cost of my property tax, California, I can probably buy a house in Michigan.
Gee, 100%. I understand. 100%.
No, I'm not saying this as a joke, but yeah,
No, you can. I can find you a house in
yeah.
Detroit, Mufti Saad. If you're ready, I can help you invest. No problem.
I'm just, I was joking on that, but yeah, I remember in those days people were buying houses full of for like $5 a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. I mean, we're pretty much, I'm at the last question. Again, I wanted to make this discussion academic and concise and right to the point,
Sure.
right? So this question here, um, so there are different Islamic institutes available, right? And something that I'm seeing as a realtor, been in the field for over 5 years now, is that there is a notion of this Ijara CDC they say that this is a permissible financing option and it's very popular, right? And I wanted to ask you, what's your honest scholarly opinion on which companies are doing this the right way? You don't have to say what to avoid, but we should at least have an idea of what we should subscribe to. And if you want to mention some things that we should avoid, by all means, please go ahead.
Yeah. So this has been a journey for me. It's been about 15 years. I recommended certain companies, and then I found out the reality of these companies. So unfortunately, it's sad, and it's also happy at the same time as well. But particularly regarding the Ijara company, my a friend I recommended maybe 12 years ago. I recommended that a friend get a property from them. Then after going through the paperwork, now this is why things are so tricky, and this is why we need proper oversight and Sharia advisory boards. Right now, this friend of mine, he said, Mufti Sahib, you told me go ahead and buy your from these people. So here's my documentation. He signed an interest-based contract. So this is where, again, the documentation is a test. If you're signing a based contract, that's what we're trying to avoid in the first place. I'm sorry, that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. So now, if you're signing that, then you're signing a separate Islamic contract. Which one is the real one, right? And which holds value in the court of law, right? If you're signing the interest-based one, that's a major red flag, right? And this is why we have to be careful, right? And we do our best, we do our due diligence, and we do our research, but also consult with the scholars. Like I said, unfortunately, I learned the hard way. This company, all scholars behind them as well. I've had some conversations with them, and unfortunately, I have not got satisfactory
From
answers.
Ijara CDC you're referring to?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And
I
then
have
what
not
about
got.
the ones you recommend, Mufti Saab? Like which companies have you seen they're doing it on the right path?
Yeah. So, as a disclaimer, it is a conflict of interest. I am board of Sharia Advisory Board of University Islamic Financial, UIS, making that clear. Guidance Residential, right, I would also recommend as well. The models are very similar, right? University Islamic Financial and Guidance Residential both use diminishing partnership models, and the work and documentation is very similar. And for the record, Guidance Residential is by Mufti Usmani, so one of the greatest greatest Islamic finance experts in the
MashaAllah. May Allah accept from all the ulama that are involved in this effort. This is what I wanted to kind of clarify, Mufti Saab. Did you want to add anything or mention anything or ask anything from your side?
uh, I guess main thing I would like to know is I've been observed, right? I'm not at a ground level. Yes, a lot of people ask me. The funny thing is, the common question I'll get, Sheikh, I'm right about to close the deal and I'm right about to purchase the home, but I want to hear from your mouth. Is you halal or against halal?
Okay.
So there's a common question people ask, but I guess the question level, right? Keep in mind, in the 1980s, 1990s, Islamic finance really didn't exist. So our parents and grandparents, they bought property in America generally was based on mortgages. But now stores are coming into play,
Mhm.
and right in the from the 2000s till now, multiple models exist, multiple options exist. But it'd be interesting to see, right? Are Muslims slowly moving towards this, or are they moving further away?
Mm.
Right. So I guess that newer generation, I guess that's the bigger concern as well. Newer generation, many of them are growing up with Islamic finance options.
Ji,
We
ji.
didn't grow up with Islamic finance options.
I can kind of share what I've seen in my
Okay.
experience working as an agent.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I would say majority of people are going the conventional route.
No.
And
Okay.
I'll give
Okay.
you some reasons as to why. And
Okay.
I'm just being candid. There's
Sure. Sure. No. No.
people.
I'm just asking a
No,
candid
you're
opinion.
not gonna
Just
mind because you're just the person that signed off on it. I'm talking about one of the reasons why I've seen people actually step away. I've had clients tell me directly that this is the last time I'm going to be working with this Islamic institute. I won't mention the name because I despise
customers.
their
Yes.
customer service.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Sad.
you know what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with the permissive. I'm talking about people who subscribe to Islamic financing,
Yes, yes.
right? And then the loan officer fell short or didn't do a good job setting the expectations of what documents they should expect.
Yes.
And so they feel like these guys are giving the hardest time. And your opponent, your challenge is a conventional loan where they're making it so easy for you to close, right?
Yeah.
That they're like, yo, this is not even making any sense. I'm frustrated at this point. And
Yeah.
I've had to kind of work as like a mediator to kind of help them understand that look, the reason why there are more things in place is because it's Sharia compliant. They're gonna be, the audit
Yeah.
process is harder than it is
Yeah.
for Rocket Mortgage or something else that's conventional. And if the reason they're doing that is to make sure you can actually afford it. And
Yeah.
these are things that loan officers should become trained on saying before you even start the transaction. This is my genuine
Yes.
advice to loan officers that are working for these Islamic institutes, that you should have a consultation and set the expectation for your client that we're going to close within 30 to 40 days. Here's
Yeah.
the timeline. Here are the bottlenecks. And here's
Yeah.
what to expect. What ends up
Yeah.
happening is, Mufti Sahib, I'll be honest, like so many times they'll give you the list of requirements in like last minute or at a, like, or they
Yeah.
reply, and these small hiccups affect the client. So this is one thing. This is
Yeah.
what this is taking people away from Islamic finance. And then you have the other end where you have many people who genuinely just don't know that Islamic financing exists. Then you have
Uh,
people that are kind of swayed away. They're told that, hey, our lender has Islamic finance. They're literally going to a lender that is open about conventional financing, and apparently they have like a ijara clause contract which makes it permissible. So we have all these Muslims in our nearby city trying to do something permissible, thinking, and the realtors are essentially guiding them to say, well, no, this guy has Islamic financing. So then it's like, okay, why is a realtor doing that? It could be one, because he's not aware, or two, because he has a better relationship with that loan officer. It could be a number of things, right? These are all the different things that I'm seeing. And then the last one, which is that people just don't believe in it. So they're like, what's the difference? I might as well just go with X,
yeah.
Y, Z. So from my experience, these are different challenges, right? Some within our control, and in terms of what we can educate. And this video is a means of serving that purpose. But then others, it has to come down to the customer service being provided
Sure.
by the institutes. And the last one, no one guides except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else can you really do, right?
Yeah. Like, I guess the part that's relevant to us, we as Muslims, we're always trying to improve and do things and with spiritual perfection. So I think
G.
that the message for us is, yeah, uh, as the imams, as the Sharia advisory boards, as the employees at these Islamic finance companies, we need to improve on how things, how we do business. Right? We're living in America. Try to be professional. Try, if you give your word, try to live up your word, and do our best to people in a fair way, and right, be bring spiritual perfection into our transactions.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Muhtasab. I really appreciate you making time and joining us all the way from California. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you and all the effort
I mean,
that you are making in this field. I really definitely appreciate it, and it's made a big impact in my life personally. So Jazakallah khairan. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And inshallah we'll see you on the next